much love for me. Got too much love for me. Sure, it worked before, way to score. You've been quite the player, but I am buying. I just ain't buying. You can quit your rent, you will fail, and I won't catch you later. Now take a note, a note's note. And you trying to make a case, don't wait, 'cause you about to be erased, ace, ace. I got too much love for me. 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 So much more than a natural built, and I won't lower myself. I play a different game. Got too much love for me. Love for me. I know how you hate to lose, but this ain't about you. No, this ain't about you. I know you spent all night, but this ain't about you. It's how I respect me. I got too much love for me. 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 So much more than a natural built, and I won't know.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Hill. This is a great topic. This is a very, I enjoy this topic because I have been exposed to it, and I have seen some of my friends getting exposed to it as well. So it's very deep for me, as well as everything that comes with it. So we have an expert that's going to talk to us about domestic violence, what it is, how we can get help, and how we can help those around us. Because everyone deserves healthy relationships. And sometimes we don't even know what a healthy relationship is, because perhaps we have not grown up in an environment that actually has taught us what it feels like to be in a healthy relationship. No matter what, though, in a healthy relationship, we should feel safe to share our thoughts. We should respect each other. We should be able to resolve conflict respectfully and make the conscious decision of staying in that relationship, because the good far outweighs the bad. But when in doubt, my ladies, when in doubt, trust your intuition, because we all have it, and the intuition is always right, always right. For more on healthy relationships, check out our playlist on either YouTube or on Facebook on relationships. We have great videos on what healthy relationships are. Now, for those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Anna Hill. Welcome. You're watching Officially Unofficial TV. I am the host and the producer of the show, and I'm also a pretty awesome headshots photographer. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to my guest. She is the co-executive director of Vera House, a local organization whose mission is to support and prevent domestic violence. Hi, Randi.
Hi, it's great to be here with you, Anna. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here with us. I know how busy you guys have been lately, in a good way, because it is filling out applications for grants and things like that. So I appreciate you being here with us, taking the time to share your services and knowledge.
Happy to be here. And some of the busyness is related to good things, and some of the busyness, I think, is related to the reality of the impact of the pandemic, both on people we serve and the high level of need, and also on our ability to have staff and volunteers available because we're short staffed and short volunteers, and the need is very high.
Okay, so there we go. And we had a show of a volunteerism and how important it is. So we're gonna actually talk about that as well. Thank you so much for mentioning it. But before we
Mhm.
get into that, Randy, can you please share your background with us?
Sure. I am a social worker, went to Syracuse University School of Social Work, and went right out of social work school to Vera House 31 years ago. So I have been here at Vera House for more than 3 decades. I started in a position as coordinator of our domestic violence coalition. So I worked with a number of people across the community to try and enhance victim safety and accountability for people who cause harm. And then I had the great honor in 2001 to become executive director. And now, as of just about a year ago, I am truly privileged to share in the leadership role that I have with Angela Douglas, our co executive director. And we've done a lot of work the last few years to try and really best reach those who've been marginalized and possibly left out of services.
That is great. Congratulations on that. And congratulations. We have to bring Angela because Angela was supposed to be with us here. And unfortunately, it
Yes.
didn't work out. But I've heard that she is amazing at what she does. And congratulations to Angela as well for, being now at the Vera House helping out. So, okay, Randy, there seems to be a confusion as when I was doing my research about it in between domestic violence and domestic abuse. Can we please go over these if there's truly a difference between the two?
I think there are a number of terms that are talking about similar behavior. So we hear people use abusive relationships or domestic abuse. We hear people talk about domestic violence. Some people say intimate partner violence because they don't see themselves as in a domestic relationship. So we try to adapt our language to what is most comfortable. But to me, abusive relationships or domestic violence or intimate partner violence are really about one person trying to maintain power and control over the other. And they do that through a variety of means. But ultimately, what they're doing is hurting someone, putting fear in them, forcing them to do something against their will. And that is really the framework that we're viewing abuse or domestic violence from.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I just like every time I hear these things and actually have observed it and experienced it, it's like, is there a way to spot an abuser? Are there signs? Are there warning signs that we can? Because are there any warning signs? So
I think that there are warning signs, and we often talk about the element of control rather than looking for physical violence, looking for the element of control. And that shows up in a variety of ways. I apologize. I have automatic lights. I'm going to leave them off so it doesn't keep changing.
it was on cue. It was on cue for you.
Yes, drama is here. But I think that when we think about abusive relationships, we really think about that desire to control the other person. And so that can be really important when we're thinking about this because people will say, I never saw any signs of physical violence. I had no idea this could happen. And what we realize is that the person was extremely controlling, isolating them from other people. That's a common form of abuse. So the person who's acting abusively always wants to be with the victim, and that at first can feel like love and attention, but it gradually begins to cut them off from family and friends and social supports. And they want to have connection with them and they don't feel like they can. We also often hear people talk about intense jealousy. That can feel like love. Oh, every time I'm talking to somebody else, they're so jealous. But in fact, that usually is an early sign of controlling behavior, that they don't trust you. I thought you did some beautiful pieces at the start of this, Anna, talking about what a healthy relationship should be, what you have a right to. So to me, one of the ways I like to think about it is if you're not having those wonderful things Anna talked about, feeling respected, like you can be your whole self, like the person appreciates you for who you are, those are often warning signs of an unhealthy relationship without necessarily having to see physical violence or emotional abuse.
Yeah, and I do think that, and you can obviously share your expertise and your knowledge, but I do think that emotional abuse is a little bit harder to to spot, right? Because, like you mentioned, it comes out as love, right? Attention. And as women, I know that men also are victims of domestic abuse, but as we know, women, is higher seen in women. But we feel, right, attention. Oh my gosh, yes, he loves me. Look at what he's doing. Oh, he doesn't like me talking to so and so. Oh, look at him. He's getting me the clothes. He's getting me clothes. That's so cute, right? And all of a sudden, these little actions that start so minuscule, like they're just like this big, it just giving him power of other things. And before we know it, we're so involved that we like, what is happening?
I know you're calling me the expert, and I've been in the field for all these years, but I would consider you an expert because I agree with everything you're saying and how you're expressing it. I think emotional abuse is very hard to recognize, and people will often say, "Well, I was never hit, so then it can't be abuse." And yet, what we hear from people who've been in abusive relationships is that typically the emotional abuse leaves more scars. People will tell us who've experienced physical violence that my physical wounds have healed, but those tapes play in my head. Those messages the abusive partner gave me, those come up over and over and over again. And the power and the destructive force of emotional abuse is often much greater than physical violence for the people experiencing it. But we don't have a lot of language in our society, and it's not a crime to be emotionally abusive. And it's hard for people to define. But I think that's where I like to go back to where you started with healthy relationships. And in a healthy relationship, you don't have fear, and not just physical fear, but you don't have emotional fear about what's he going to say. You're not walking on eggshells. And you did mention, and I think it's important to say, that while we do recognize the majority of victims of relationship violence are women, we know that men can be victimized and that people who don't identify in the gender binary are victimized as well. This happens in same-sex partnerships. But it really comes down to, does the person value you for the whole person you are? Or are you hearing messages about not being good enough, not being smart enough? Sometimes people hear, no one else would have you. You're lucky to have me. If you're hearing all of those messages, then it's time to take a step back as early as you can. Because as you said, I think these things do escalate over time, and it's easier to make a plan for yourself earlier on.
And you know, the crazy thing about it is that sometimes, right? Especially, I'm gonna speak for my culture, right? Sometimes the things that are abusive to us are cute, and even if we see these signs, right? Like all these signs, if we see them, we don't stop it. We still green light it. We still go green light, all full steam ahead. And I know that you guys are, Vera House is huge on prevention. And the more and more we talk about the healthy signs of relationship, how a healthy relationship feels like, that is prevention right there. That is prevention, because
Absolutely.
these guys who do these, they look great. They look amazing in paper. They're, oh my gosh, I found the guy of my dreams. And then they show up, and they don't show up right away. They show up after they have some great real estate in you, and you were so involved and you didn't even know it, that when you choose to kind of try to move, you're like, what happened? right? You don't see this. So
Mhm.
knowing these signs is so important. So let's talk about some of the signs, right? We talked about control. What other signs do we, what other signs can we look for?
Well, I think certainly any instance of physical violence, and physical violence often begins with something more like pushing or grabbing your arm, and things that people don't think of as punching or kicking,
Mm-hmm.
but they hurt, they made you uncomfortable, you felt trapped. So I think any kind of physical violence. I think somebody not giving you control of your own money, trying to manage your finances when you have independence and opportunity, and they seem to be taking away your economic independence. I think put downs. Um, Sometimes you could think of them as a cute nickname, like you're saying. We label things as cute, but in fact they're really causing harm because they're a put down, and you start hearing it as you walk away from them, and when you're waking up the next morning you're thinking about those hurtful messages they gave you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, isolation, trying to cut you off from other people and other things you like to do, any of those types of behaviors. And that extreme jealousy is a very common one we hear from people. So I think it's very important. And when you mentioned the importance of prevention, I appreciate that. And yes, talking about healthy relationships is prevention. And when you say we're just calling it cute and we're going along with it, in reality, what we want to say is let's help change that culture. So we may have gone along with it before, but we have a responsibility to recognize the harm that's caused when we don't call it out and acknowledge what it is. And in fact, most people I've known over the years who've lived through an abusive relationship will tell you they want the relationship to continue and the abuse to end,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there's a myth that an abusive relationship is all horrible and somebody should immediately get out as soon as they see the first sign. But I think we do a disservice when we don't speak to the fact that it's a little more complicated. Sometimes people will say this person is my soulmate, and we can have some amazing conversations, some amazing time together, unlike anything I ever had with anybody else. But when the abuse comes, I think so much less of myself. I'm having a hard time getting up and going to work. And so they're holding both a relationship that has some positives and this hurtful behavior. And so, ideally, if we're doing good prevention work, we start developing a culture where the person who's causing harm recognizes the harm they're causing and tries to change that behavior. I think we're a little bit farther from where we want to be with that, but that is our ultimate goal, that we're able to change the culture so there isn't so much tolerance and permission for people to do this hurtful behavior.
Yes, I that's one of the reasons why I love Vera House and what you guys do, because you have a program not only for victims but for abusers who realize, hey, I understand that this is happening and I actually value this relationship. I want to do everything I can to help out, and I love that you guys have two programs for that. So great job on doing that. So Randy, we have a question for you. Is it okay to ask you now?
Of course.
Okay. So we have a question from Yvonne, and I'm going to, okay, so let me bring this right over here. Okay. So Yvonne asked, first of all, hi Yvonne. How does Vera House, and if you know Randy, and other social service providers, the court, etc., view and handle emotional abuse here in Onondaga County? Other providers.
Well, that's a great question, Yvonne. Unfortunately, emotional abuse is not really a crime. Most emotional abuse would not be considered a crime. You would have to have a really serious threat that is realistic and time set to have any kind of emotional abuse be considered a crime. So it's not typically coming into courts. It might come into family court as part of a larger petition. It might come in a matrimonial case as a factor to be considered. But emotional abuse is something that we have to look at as a community and as a society. And as Anna was saying, start talking about what people have a right to in healthy relationships. It's not something that our criminal justice system can really take the lead on. It's something that we as community members who care about the lives that people are having and how they're living in relationships, we have to take a responsibility to try and change the standard that has allowed emotional abuse to continue for so long.
Yeah, and Randy, and that's a great point that you make about society, like as a whole, as a collective, we need to do this because I have experience, right? And I have seen when one of my friends, even with me myself, right? I was like, this is not right. This doesn't feel right. This is not a healthy relationship. And I was trying to step out, just end it. I will get the comments from family and friends. He's such a good guy. Why are you breaking up with him? Because he does the cute things and that's all people see. Because emotional abuse is something that is not seen unless the person is just so already done with everything that they start showing signs of they're not okay. And that is one of the hardest things to do because we feel embarrassed to share that we, right, ended up with a person like that, right? So it's really, really hard. So if the community knows that this happens, how emotional abuse is huge and is real, and it just plays with our minds, right? The court should see this. The court, but how do we prove it, right? How do we prove that?
Well, and I think so a lot of these situations, people don't want a court involved, right? They just want to figure out how to either have the relationship to continue and the abuse stop or exit the relationship. And so I think that piece that you were just talking about, Anna, is really critical. What are the messages that family and friends and intimates in your life are giving you when you reach out and say, I think I'm going to have to get out of this relationship. It's not healthy for me. And for somebody to say, oh, this is the great person. Why would you even think about that? That's part of the problem. Because I think what we need to say is, tell me why it's not feeling healthy for you. And we need to hear that person and remind them what they have a right to in a healthy relationship. And I think that piece is really critical because what you're describing is so common among people that we see and hear from over these many years, that people in their circle did not support. They're trying to seek safety, emotional safety, physical safety, because they saw the person causing harm as being a good catch or something along those lines. Absolutely.
It's I'm loving the progress that has been made, right? So far it's been progress, but there's a lot more to do. And having Vera House and you, Randy, and Angela, and all the supporters for the belief in the organization and in the cause is just great. It's great having all that because we need to do more on that. Not only does emotional abuse affect us, it affects our children, it affects the family around us, it affects our everything, it affects our jobs, it affects entirely our lives entirely. So this is something that definitely needs to be prevented. I do not want to see anybody, no woman, no man, nothing going through emotional abuse or physical abuse because we don't deserve any of that. And that's for you. If you're watching, you don't deserve this at all. And you're okay to speak up. You need to speak up. And if you have to stay away from the family who are saying that, why? There are no men out there. He's such a great guy. You're not going to find another one like him. If you have to stop talking to them, stop talking to them because you're not crazy. You're living it and you know what's going on. So resources like Vera House will help you. So as we mentioned this, Randy, can we talk about the services that Vera House offers and how people could and access those services?
Yes. The best way to start with services for Vera House or other organizations like us, we have a 24-hour support line And that is available to people 7 days a week, any time of the day. And that is 315-468-3260. Thank you for putting the web page up there for us at the same time here, Anna. If you call that support line, you don't even have to give your name. You don't have to give any details you don't want to share. You can reach a trained counselor 24 hours a day to just share what's going on, to say, I'm thinking about getting an order of protection. What does that mean? Somebody told me that they think I'm in an abusive relationship, but I don't know. Can I tell you what's going on? Whatever it is you want to call about, our staff and volunteers are here to take your call. And that 24-hour support line is not just a support line. It's also the gateway to other services at the agency. So it's a way to get connected with the other services I'll talk about in a moment. And I also want to add that during the pandemic, we recognized people were trapped at home with people who were causing them harm. And so trying to make a phone call to get connected with us was very difficult and impossible for some people who were in very dangerous, unsafe situations. Mm-hmm. So we added a chat feature to our website. And if you go to verahouse.org, right at the top of the website, you'll see support live web chat. And so we operate that from 8:30 a.m. till 9 p.m., 7 days a week. And it's an opportunity for anybody who may not feel safe or comfortable making a phone call. And I know we find a lot with the younger generation, they're much more used to typing something than speaking on the phone. So we found that it has worked very well for them. We've had over 300 chats so far this year, and almost 5,000 support line calls year to date. So we know that these services are important. We encourage people to use them. Chat is completely anonymous, and the chats go away and are not saved anywhere, so you don't have to worry about that. Everything here should be able to be confidential. And then if you're interested in additional services, we have a wide range. We have an advocacy program. They provide emotional support, and they also help you navigate systems. So if you are going to go to court, or you choose to work with police or the district attorney's office, or you have child protective services in your life, our advocates will help navigate those paths. We're kind of bridge builders from the many systems in the community to the people who are interacting with them. Our advocates also run a number of support groups. We have a group called Heal and Reclaim that we operate several times a week at different times. And that Heal and Reclaim group is a place for people to come together, to find support, to share stories and truths with one another, and to find, ultimately, we hope, safety and healing. We also offer some targeted groups for people who identify as LGBTQ. We have a targeted group for people who are over the age of 50 who may have experienced elder abuse or abuse in later life. So all of those support groups, again, the access point is that 24-hour support line. And we do provide therapeutic counseling for sexual assault victims and for children who witness domestic violence. We have mental health counselors available. And as Anna mentioned earlier, we have a program for people with abusive behaviors. We have a program called Alternatives, which is geared to men who've caused harm to their partners. And we have a program called Steps for individuals who've caused harm and identify as female. So all of that information is also available on our website. Thank you so much for sharing that in real time, Anna. And we provide assistance with petitions for orders of protection. You can access that initial response through that support line. We used to regularly staff an office in the courthouse. I don't think they're back to having that office staffed yet, but we can do remote orders of protection. So somebody can be in their home or come into our office, and we can request a hearing that's done remotely for the initial temporary order of protection. So we can assist with that service as well. And we do lots of education and prevention. So if you want to have conversations about healthy relationships, if this conversation is sparking you, then I hope we might be able to offer something that would meet your needs to help keep this conversation going in our community and communities across the world, because we know we need to keep having it.
Yes, and this is something that we could do, Randi. So you're like, okay, we need to continue the conversation. And yes, we're going to have another show about healthy relationships, because this is prevention. Knowing how how it feels to be in a healthy relationship is the key to prevention, because we will know. And sometimes even if we get into the relationship because it looks good, because it's the, oh my gosh, this is the guy or the girl of my dreams and I feel great with them, right? Even if we get to that point, knowing those signs and being aware of them will help us not get farther along when it is truly an unhealthy, abusive relationship. So what do you say about that? We come back to it? Yes?
I absolutely agree. And so maybe the show you do with Angela, we could be focused on healthy relationships.
Yes. Okay. That sounds like a plan. That sounds like a
We'll
plan.
set you up.
That sounds like a plan. All right. So let's go to the chat room and see, send some shout outs to some of our people who are watching right now. So I want to say, okay, Yvonne, thank you. Tara Marie. Hi, Anna. Hello, Demi. Thank you so much for being here. And Gabe, hi. Glad to see you here. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. We're here to answer any questions you might have. We are going to now transition to talking about why do abusers do what they do? Is there something that we as a community, as a collectively, can also help that not happen, or minimize it, right? So that we have more chances to actually stopping this.
Well, I think one thing is just what we're talking about here, healthy relationships. I think many times people who cause harm to someone else or abuse someone else haven't had a lot of models of healthy relationships in their life either. So they're many times following a pattern that they witnessed in their childhood and in other aspects of their lives. And I think we talked about that most relationships with abuse happen because one person is trying to maintain control over the other. I don't think that's in many situations because people really have that much power and control. It often is because they don't feel like they have their own control over themselves, that they're trying to get control by manifesting that over another person, rather than figuring out what they need to do in their own work to develop their own happiness that isn't so focused on the other person. Often people call this the external locus of control, so that the person who's causing harm thinks that the person they're in relationship with is responsible for their feelings, for everything that's happening, rather than looking at an internal locus of control that has us check, what is it that I can take control of and be responsible for to myself that makes me a better partner in relationships? I also think trauma is a significant contributing factor. So many people who cause harm have experienced harm in one way or another. They may have been victims of childhood abuse. They may be victims of sexual abuse or sexual assault. They may also have been victims of emotional abuse. And sometimes people who experience harm identify more with the aggressor and end up trying to follow that pattern rather than ending up being victimized again themselves. So I think the more we model and talk about healthy relationships, the more we challenge abuse of power and control wherever it may be in our communities and relationships, the better chance we have of ultimately preventing it.
Yeah, I agree. And to one extent, because of what you just mentioned, that the abusers have unfortunately gone through a trauma and they have now resolved it themselves, and they have come up with coping mechanisms to help them live. And unfortunately, those coping mechanisms are not healthy. They're not healthy. This is something that they, as a child, developed because they didn't know better. And that's the only way for them to be able to either discern or try to come up with a reason why, or even not even think about why this is happening to me. And because of that, I do believe that we feel sorry for them. and
Mm.
we empathize with them, and we're like, okay, you know what, maybe, especially us, because us women, we want to help out, right? That's what
It
this.
keeps victims trapped. Absolutely. I think that's a big reason when you ask why doesn't somebody leave? I'm afraid he would kill himself or he's been through so much. So in this work on it, we have to figure out how to do a lot of both and, right? So acknowledging that trauma may be contributing to this, that the person's been hurt, but that doesn't mean that we have to accept the abusive behavior. And so separating those two, somebody has experienced harm and it would be helpful for them to get support and healing around their trauma, but at the same time they don't have a right to be causing harm to you, and trying to hold those both at the same time is something I think we struggle with as a society.
It is tough, but I mean, us doing this work and this prevention and is what's going to stop it. And I hesitate when I say stopping, because it's just like, there's so much that happens, and there's all this trauma inheritance, all of that goes through. So it's like, okay, yes, it can be done, this work can be done, but we have to do it as a society, everybody, schools, parents, doctors, teachers, friends, families, everybody has to be in it. Everyone has to be in it for it to actually be stopped.
I completely agree, but sometimes people will say like it's society, and then I always remind folks, well, society is us. It's all the little people.
It is.
And
It is.
so, yes, we have to do it everywhere, but it also has to start with us. I mean, one of the great gifts to me when I came to Vera House in 1990, one of the first things I was given is the power and control wheel, which is a very common tool developed in Duluth, Minnesota, to look at the many aspects of domestic violence. And so around that power and control wheel, you have emotional abuse, you have threatening behavior and intimidation, you have physical and sexual violence, you have all of those categories: minimizing, denying, and blaming. And when I looked at that wheel, I realized this is a wheel that we can look at in all of our relationships, not just an intimate partner relationship. When I came to Vera House, I was the mother of a 2-year-old. And so it gave me a chance to think, when am I making decisions based on power and control? When is it really about emotional safety or best interest of my child? And when is it because I'm stressed and tired and want things to be a certain way and just want somebody to listen to me? And obviously, a relationship with a child is different than some other relationships in our life. But looking at the power and control wheel, and then looking at the healthy relationship wheel on the other end, which talks about respect, trust, honesty, accountability, it reminded me that all of us are somewhere on the continuum in how we act in relationships. And the question is, where are you and which direction are you going? So if all of us is moving in the direction toward healthy relationship, we can eventually change that society that you're talking about.
We want to see that wheel. We want to see that wheel. We have another question for you. Okay. Is there a way to communicate? This is from Gabe. Is there a way to communicate or engage with your abuser without causing harm or extreme abuse situations?
Well, that's a complicated question. I think what we do know is that a victim or survivor is not able to prevent the violence of the other person. And it is so common for people to tell us, well, first it was, I was supposed to have the dinner ready at a certain time, but then when I got the dinner ready exactly at that time, it was never the right dinner. And then I tried to do, and I heard this, and I was told that that's how I push a button. So I never did that again, but then the next day the button had moved. So I want to say that there's nothing that a victim or survivor can do to guarantee the behavior of the abusive person. I think a lot depends on, does the person who's causing harm want to change and stop causing harm? If they don't, then there's very little a victim or survivor can do besides make a choice for what they need for themselves. If somebody really genuinely wants to change, they can engage in a conversation about what they need to be safer and not to cause harm in the future. So, for example, somebody might say, I need to be able to take a time out. So let's agree that if things are escalating and I say I need a time out, that we'll agree that I can have that break. But that really can only be negotiated if the person who's causing harm is committed to stopping harm. I don't know if that makes sense, or you have additional questions following that up, Gabe.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do agree with you 100%, Randy. There's nothing that a victim can do. And even that word victim just has something like, I wish we could use another word, but that's what it is, can do to stop the abuse. There's nothing. For example, I experienced the emotional abuse part of it, and the more I was myself, the angrier this person got. The more I was myself, the angrier this person got. I'm very independent, and I do want and love relationships, being together with my partner and doing partner things, but I also need time for myself. And I couldn't have time for myself. There was always this what you mentioned, this huge jealousy, this insecurity happening, and all these things. So I would say, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna go out because I want to avoid this thing. But that wouldn't stop it, because there will be something else that will come up. Oh, now you're on your phone. Oh, no, something else will come up. And it was just to the point, it's like, this is just not healthy. And then it comes that time where people ask, right, after we exit or what took you so long? Why did you stay there for so long? That's another question that I have a kind of like an issue with, because it's not that simple. It's not that simple to get out. It isn't. And I know you find that, in Vera House when you counsel. And what did you say to them? Like, what is what is the first step, I guess, to get out when everything else has failed?
Well, and one thing I would say is we don't counsel people to get out, because we really believe in meeting people where they are. And some people come to us and they're struggling, saying, I think this is abuse, but I'm still trying to make a go of it. And we don't see it as our role to say you have to leave this relationship now. I think people come to terms with.
Okay, so we lost Randy real quick. Not sure what happened. Randy is going to come back. So Randy, if you're watching, please dial back in. Okay, she's coming in. All right, let's see, Randy. Okay, Randy, you are in.
That was strange.
That was very strange. It was like, okay, I was about to just start dropping knowledge.
I was talking, and then it said thank you and
bye.
Yeah. But I think this is probably the most frequently asked question people have when they hear of a domestic violence situation or an abusive relationship. Why would someone stay, and why wouldn't they leave? And for us, it's partly what we were just talking about, right? Many people want the relationship to continue and the abuse to end. And they have to get a place where they recognize, oh, I can't have the relationships can continue and the abuse end. So now I have to make the choice. And that takes people a long time. And we often talk here at Vera House about change in any of our lives. If you think about difficult situations you were in, most times, most people don't just immediately make an exit. A job that's not right for you, a friendship that's not okay. You go in and out. You take a step out, and then you think, oh, I feel guilty, and I come back. That's how change happens. And it's no different in a relationship that has abuse. People are trying to figure it out, and they love and care often about the person who's causing them harm. And so it's not a matter of shutting a door and being gone. So we don't counsel people, you have to get out today. We do talk about safety. We talk about safety planning. So if you're staying in the relationship, what will you do if things escalate, either emotionally or physically? What do you need to prepare in case you do decide to leave? So I think safety planning and thinking about, okay, if I am going to leave, where's my paperwork kept? Am I going to have that? What are the things I can do so that when I'm ready to go, I have everything together and can make that move and feel confident in my ability to go forward with the decision I made? We also know that Most people leave an abusive relationship 5 to 7 times before they leave for good. That's not uncommon with the folks that we've worked with over time. It's not an in and out, it's a process of figuring it out. And I think if we as a society could give a little bit more room and space, because what happens many times for someone who's being hurt in a relationship is their partner is using emotional abuse, right? And saying, you're so stupid. You can't even figure this out without me. You can't do anything. And then people around them are like, you're still in this relationship? What are you, crazy? So they're getting emotional abuse from the people who could be offering unconditional care and support. And that's not helpful. So if you want to help a friend or a family member, be really careful about being just as controlling as the person you're trying to get them away from. And we find that happens in our work. People who say, I just want to help, their helping involves a lot of the same behaviors: coercion, threats, intimidation. Well, I'm not going to talk to you if you don't get out of this relationship. And in a sense, the person's just finding abuse wherever they turn.
And that is real, Randy. That is real. And all the things that you mentioned coming from is it doesn't happen one time. You just don't say, okay, I'm done with this. Me, I went back with this person 3 times. 3 times. And I knew that it wasn't a good relationship. And still then I went back 3 times. But then what made it more of a yes, this is the right decision to do, is that when I wasn't around this person, when I will ask for breaks, and actually I wouldn't even ask for breaks. I will beg for freaking breaks. Like I will be like, I did. And so when that would happen, I would feel so good and calm and at peace. And I could write, I could go to the movies, I could do all the things that are me. And that let me know you are right. Your instincts are right. You need to stop this. And so it just started with getting support from the people who understood what I was going through. And unfortunately, that wasn't my family. Unfortunately, that wasn't my family. I had to go out to get the help I needed to get out of it. So you have to do that. You have to, if you know what you're feeling, you know what you're going through. Your family or your friends are not on your side on this, or like Randy mentioned, you were experiencing the same type of abuse you're experiencing with the other person. You know this is not right. You go and find another type of support because the support is out there.
Absolutely. Great points, Anna. Thank you.
I'm telling you, this is like, we got to talk about healthy relationships. We have to prevent this. And I will say I'm so lucky in a way because I knew what a healthy relationship was supposed to be like. Others are not. And this is why it will take longer for them to understand. And with services like Vera House, they will understand what it feels like to be in a healthy relationship. And
when we offer that healthy relationships wheel, in schools, in the community, many people will say, does this exist? I've never seen a relationship with respect, trust, accountability. They don't have models for it. And we don't talk in school, in life, in community about what people have a right to in healthy relationships, which we've begun to do today, and I think is so important. I remember years ago, I was co-facilitating a support group for women who had experienced domestic violence. And we were reading something from a book related to emotional abuse, I think. And I shared a beginning portion, and it said, fear has no place in a loving relationship. And I went to go on to the next piece, and all the people in that group said, hang on. Can you read that again? Fear has no place in a loving relationship. That was entirely a new concept for all of those people. Whereas for me, I glossed over it as, of course, fear has no place in a loving relationship. So we have to change a culture that has for so long tied fear to love.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we're almost out of time, Randy. This is such an important conversation. We have we have a comment actually from Yvonne that I want to bring up. She writes, and it is scary. My mom endured emotional and physical abuse because he was the breadwinner. She felt trapped financially. It was until he moved his abuse to my brother. Thankfully, she moved us out to our own place pretty quickly and never looked back. This was in the 70s when DV wasn't really talked about. I cannot even imagine how scary this was for her with 4 little ones. Oh my gosh. Good for your mom. Good for your mom. That was courage right there.
Yes. Well, and thank you for sharing that, Yvonne, and for being on with us today. I appreciate all of your comments and questions. And I think it's not uncommon in our experience that the trigger for somebody to make the move is when they feel like the impact on their children is something that they can't live with, even though they've been willing to tolerate the impact on themselves. So your mother made a move that people are still making today, not making the choice for themselves, but making it for their children or those they love and care about. And thank goodness for the courage that people have to make those very scary steps.
Yes. And I want to close with one term that is typically accompanies the emotional and psychological abuse, and that term is gaslighting. Can we please talk about that, define it? Because I do believe that if we are aware of this, that this actually happens, and it's one of the worst. If we're aware of this, we can. Randy, take it, please.
Well, I think you're going to have something to add shortly, and so I'm going to be happy to have you contribute to the conversation. But gaslighting is connected to the fact that many times someone who's causing harm to the person they're in relationship with is trying to label the person they're in relationship with as crazy. They have mental health issues, they're crazy, they're not a reliable source. So there's this you're crazy, they're crazy thing that's buzzing around them. And then gaslighting is this taking something that's not true and trying to convince the person that it is truth. So, for example, you may have gaslighting where you can't find your keys and you look everywhere and you started where you usually keep them in the kitchen and they weren't there, and you looked all over the house, and you came back and you said to the partner who causes you harm, I just spent half an hour looking for my keys. And they say, your keys are hanging on the hook right there. So they're making you think you're crazy, but they actually are using their control to make you feel crazy. They are pulling the rug out from under you, creating situations that don't make any sense just to cause you harm and make you question yourself. Because what gaslighting does is it makes victims and survivors think, am I crazy? Is this me? And I think you're absolutely right on it to point out what an important part of this is, because if you're thinking you're crazy, then you're going to question even more. Should I be making a move? Do I trust myself to have the judgment to figure out what I should do? So I think very important, but I have a sense you have something to add too from the way you brought it up. Am I right?
I would have a lot to add up. I'm just very passionate about this because this was the main source of how I came to realize that this wasn't a healthy relationship that I was in. Gaslighting was one of his main source of what he did. And I didn't even know what gaslighting was. I didn't even know that existed. I mean, how can someone who like you mentioned, right? There's good and there's like not so good. How is someone who would do so many wonderful things for me and treat me to all of these extravagant things and oh my gosh, this guy is perfect. How could this person have this horrible side? So that's when then you start questioning, wait, I'm not looking at this the right way. Because look at this, how can this person, and you have to be so strong and so courageous and just believe in yourself that you are not crazy.
Right.
Especially
You
if
have to convince yourself,
yeah.
I am not crazy, and therefore this is another way the person is trying to harm me. And that takes a while because, I was talking before about people who cause harm having an external locus of control and blaming the victim or survivor for their feelings and behaviors. That works really well because many times victims and survivors have an internal locus of control. So they think they have control over things that they don't. So if I act a little differently, if I focus attention on them, if I do these things, I can control the behavior of the other. And that also isn't true. And so that internal and external come together. And when somebody is gaslighting you and making you think you're crazy, then you just get caught in a spin and can't find your way out of the situation. So thank you for raising it. I think it's a really important point.
You are so welcome. It definitely is. In this conversation, I would love to continue this conversation. This is so important, and we are going to have part 2. But Randy, you mentioned that you guys at Vera House were super busy. One has to do with, with the pandemic and everything that came with it, and the lack of volunteers. How can volunteers sign up to help Vera House?
Well, we make that pretty easy. If you go onto our website at verahouse.org and it says, how can I help? There's a page that says volunteering, and there's a volunteer application right on there. And we are really dependent on volunteers to provide a lot of our core services. We have volunteers helping to answer our 24-hour support line, helping to cover that chat. We're now doing 7 days a week. That's a wonderful opportunity for people you can sit at home on your computer. Once we get you set up, you can be doing other things that you need to do at that time and just responding when a chat comes in. We also assist people, our volunteers help with orders of protection. And our volunteers respond to sexual assault victims at the hospital all of the evening, overnight, and weekend hours that sexual assault victims come to the hospital needing assistance. So if you are interested in volunteering, please go to our website, take a look around. You can email if you have any questions, or you can feel free to fill out that application.
Yes. So do the volunteers have to have a specific training on?
We do extensive training. We're not going to have you walk in here and say, let me answer your support line. We're going to do an extensive orientation. That's right now it's all virtual. Some of it is synchronous, some asynchronous. So you'll all be on with other volunteers at the same time. And then also during the week, you'll be watching some videos and reading some materials and then coming back together to talk about them. And then we do what's really a mentorship or coaching process, so that someone who wants to answer support line calls after they get trained, they would sit with somebody else taking the call. Then that person would sit with them when they take a call. So we would give you lots of training.
Yes. Okay. And then one last thing, Vera House is a non-for-profit, and it's for contributions and volunteers, and that's how you get your support. You have a gala coming up, which is one of your top fundraisers. Is that correct?
Yes, it is our largest fundraiser of the year, coming up on December 4th. We have both an in-person and a virtual option. And the gala is an opportunity to come together as a community, support the needs of Vera House. Everything is right on our website. There's an events page, and you can find it all right there. And if you're interested, we are trying to get registrations in the next few days, because December 4th is not very far away.
I know.
It begins with a cocktail hour at 6, dinner at 7. And you'll see, if you look at the website, we are adhering to all the COVID safety protocols. So in order to come into the gala, you must be vaccinated or have a negative test, and we will be requiring proof of that. So thank you for flipping to the page. So everything is right there on our page, and we would love to have you join us if you're interested.
Yes, look at this. This is, this is great. And the way you're having it hybrid is for those who cannot attend is still great. And you have a great silent auctions that I have participated on before. So there's some great prizes in there. So
yes, we've got some Giants tickets this year, restaurant gift certificates, lots of fun stuff.
Yes, and that's how you guys can just go to the Vera House website and just register there. And you guys, thank you so much for being here with us and joining us in this important conversation. Please feel free to share this video, this conversation with your friends and family. Feel free to go and check out the Vera House webpage and check out the volunteers, the donation, and because Vera House is doing something so great for all of us, and their initiative and their ongoing, for helping prevent domestic violence, domestic abuse, and teaching about healthy relationship is all a free service or a very little contribution. Is that correct, Randi?
Yeah, all of our victim services are no cost. So the support groups, the therapy, the advocacy services, some of our prevention education programs, we do try, if somebody has capacity to help to pay for that, we appreciate that. But otherwise, we are able to offer most of them at no cost. Yes.
That is beautiful.
Our program for people who cause harm, that's a sliding scale fee though.
Okay. So great. Thank you for clarifying that. Well, you guys, thank you so much. Stay tuned. Just make sure you follow Officially Unofficial TV so that you can be notified when we come up with this healthy relationship and what healthy relationships are supposed to be like. And again, if you would like to be a guest on our show, you can send us an email at officiallyunofficialtv@gmail.com for consideration. And Officially Unofficial is also get all of these benefits and we come live to you based on donations as well. So if you would like to make a donation to Officially Unofficial, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Anna Gill. We'll really appreciate her. So next Thursday, we are actually going to be enjoying Thanksgiving. So we're not going to be We're not going to be live. However, on the 2nd, we have another amazing guest that you guys just love is Khalid Bey. And he is the author. He's actually local. Do you know him, Randi?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yes, so he's going to be our guest, and he's going to be talking about the power of now, staying in the present and enjoying our present. What we feel like he is an amazing author and speaker, so you guys will enjoy him. So that is on December 2nd, right here, Officially Unofficial TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, and YouTube, LinkedIn, and here on Facebook. Okay, so everybody, thank you so much for being here. My name is Anna Gil. Randi, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, of course. And thank you guys for watching and for being participating in this conversation. Thank you so much. And we will be seeing you December 2nd. Thank you, Randi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I got too much love for me. 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 So much more.